incredible flavours, even better stories. One pour, 10 minutes, Aussie bourbon lovers sharing bourbon with Australia.
There we go.
There it is.
What are we drinking, Dave?
This is a Burton James Single Barrel wheated bourbon, and we're again joined by Sean McComic from Burton James, who made this for us. Delicious, delicious bourbon. Single barrel. Hey, Sean.
Welcome.
Hi, how are y'all?
Yeah, we're super good and delighted to have you back. Hey, thanks for having us. We're really curious about the story about how you got into distilling, or how you got into doing the bourbon thing. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so I always wanted to have my own business, and I'm kind of in the food hospitality world, so I always either waited tables or worked in restaurants. And then I eventually went to school because I wanted to do product development for a food company. When I was in culinary school, I was like, I want to create the next flavor of the Doritos or the Cheetos or whatever. Somebody's got to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't know how to do that. So I graduated with culinary, worked in hotels and stuff like that, and was looking to do product development. And when I was graduating from that school, I heard you had to be a food scientist, and I was like, I've never heard of food science. What is food science? And so I was working. Actually, I left technically hotel restaurants and went into retail store. It was a kitchen gadget store that sold kitchen appliances and gadgets and things like that. And it didn't do very well, so it was going out of business. A customer came in and said, well, now what are you going to do that you're out of a job? I was like, I don't know, but I really want to do product development for a food company, but you have to be a food scientist, and I don't even know what food science is or where to go. And he goes, well, I'm a food scientist. And I was like, really?
Oh,
and
wow.
I was like, well, where do I go to school? And he's like, well, I went to University of Tennessee, but I was living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time. And he goes, well, University of Georgia has a very good food science program. And so literally the next day I went on their website and Googled food science, and that was June, and I was in college once again in September.
Wow.
So
fantastic.
I went and got a second bachelor's and a master's in food science. So I just kind of put life on hold and got a food science degree.
And then so the story keeps going from there, though, right? Did you develop the next flavor of Doritos? What happened?
I did not, but I did. So then I did get hired by Kraft Foods. So Kraft Foods, like that big giant mega company. And I worked in cereal first. So Battle Creek, Michigan is kind of the home of Kellogg's cereal and also Post Cereal. Well, Post Cereal had their headquarters there at one point in time. It's now moved. But and so worked on different cereals, and then I went to the Kraft's. They had two different headquarters. One was in the Midwest, one was on the East Coast. I went to the Chicago headquarter building there in R&D. There's like 400 food scientists walking around in the building doing things. And so worked on cheese. So I worked on processed cheese and natural cheese. I worked in the food service area where I worked on sauces and dressings and frozen mac and cheese and all kinds of your standard Kraft products. And then being from Kentucky, so I'm from Kentucky. I'm technically the fifth generation to be living in Adairsville, Kentucky. But my dad was in the U.S. Army. So we never lived in Adairsville, but we came home to Adairsville every summer and Christmas. And I decided one year in 2012 I was going to go tour Kentucky as part of my getting to relearn Kentucky a little bit more. And part of that 10-day vacation, I did 4 days of the Bourbon Trail. And in 2012, there's only 7 official distilleries on the Bourbon Trail.
What?
And I went to 10. Now the official count is 46. I'm trying to get on the trail with 12 or 11 other distilleries, so it'll be over 50 distilleries on the Bourbon Trail, hopefully in 2025. Yeah. And so I did 10. And then being a food scientist, by the time I walked into the second or third distillery, I was like, well, I could do this. It's the same thing at every factory. I was like, if someone can learn how to make whiskey in the woods, I can learn how to make whiskey in a building. So I decided that was 2012, and I said, well, I'm going to target 2018 to 2020 to have a distillery. And then I was living in Chicago, but I thought that I would prefer to do it where I'm from, in Adairsville. It seemed to make sense. And then I figured, well, what would I call it? And Burton James, my great-grandfather, that is an excellent whiskey name. And he played baseball. And so at the time, and even still now, there's very few sports-related whiskeys or bourbons. And so I figured I could be baseball-themed, great kind of historic-sounding name, and tie in the baseball cues and all that Americana as well.
I love the baseball theme, and I know the newspaper article bits around the bottle.
Yes,
it's like
and
really
so
cool.
the little articles are real articles that my great-grandmother clipped out of the paper. I have a small little box that has literally a tiny little article. She just clipped out that tiny little square and put it in a box. And they're well over 100 years now 100 years old because he left baseball in 1919. And so all these articles are ancient.
How does the food science background come across to the way that you kind of play with flavors and when you're distilling and when you're kind of blending and creating delicious products like the delicious wheated single barrel we're drinking?
Yes, so we do a lot of tasting. So every day that we distill, the next day we taste what we made. Right now I am distilling on a very small 25-gallon pot still, which is super small. I do have an 800-gallon pot still waiting to be used once I finally get enough financing to turn it on. But we taste through every batch, and by having all that sensory training and everything like that with food science helps. And then with the blending, kind of picturing how something will play well together, because if you're developing something, you'll have all your separate ingredients. You're going to try to figure out how they're going to taste well together. I also have a vodka brand that has different flavors of vodka, and so I did all the flavor development work for myself on the vodkas.
And when we were talking, you said that part of your crafting even brought you to Melbourne to look at Vegemite.
It did. So I was lucky enough to travel all the way to Australia from Chicago for work, which is very nice to get to be paid to stay for free in Melbourne. And that was going to the craft factory there, and we did get to have a nice tour and see the large fermenters. Vegemite is it's fermented. It's yeast.
Right.
So, yeah.
The story is it came from, like, the original Vegemite was that it was scraped from the bottom of beer barrels. Is that, do you know, is that, like, I don't know if you know, that's as much as I know. That's the end of my knowledge.
Dave making up stuff again.
No, it probably does make sense that that's probably what it is, or how it started. And so it's the yeast, and with beer, they typically do not keep the yeast in beer. They might keep it for 1 or 2 brewings, but then they need to start with fresh yeast again.
Yeah. So are you a Vegemite fan?
I did try it. It is a little bit saltier than I'm not used to, and so since I was there for just a short period of time, I wasn't there long enough to acquire a taste. But I did try it.
Wait, Sean. Can we draw a thread between, because the yeast and the beer? Can we draw a thread back to bourbon then from Vegemite?
Yeah. So all yeast is the Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So if they're using beer yeast, then it's basically could be a similar yeast that's used in bourbon.
Is there a possibility that the same yeast used in Vegemite is used in a bourbon? Is that possible?
That would be interesting. We should ask some of the Australian distilleries to get some of that Vegemite and see if they could get something to grow.
All right, we're on a mission. This is a new thing for us. That's awesome.
You said when you were at the distilleries and you first inspired, thinking how hard would this be to do? Has it been as easy or as challenging as you thought? And what was your biggest challenge?
So the production and operations is probably the easiest part of the whole thing. It's really the selling, the marketing and the selling, because there's a lot of competition. In 2012, as I said, there's basically 10, maybe possibly 12 distilleries in Kentucky. Now I feel like there's like 80 illegal distilleries in Kentucky, but the U.S. has over 3,000 distilleries at the time.
Wow.
and in 2012 there was only 200 and something legal distilleries. So the competition, the explosion of products on the on the shelves is just kind of amazing, and so it's really the hand selling, going to the liquor stores, and a customer comes in and you're like, "Hi, would you like to try my Burton James whiskey?" And they're like, "Yeah," and then they try it, and they like it, and they buy a bottle. But there's a lot of customers that are going to be like, "Nope, not interested. I'm here for tequila."
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
So so they just kind of walk on by. But that's probably the hardest, is the getting people to learn about your product and then to buy it.
Well, we love discovering it at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, and we love how it tastes, and we're very lucky to be able to bring it back with us to Australia.
And if Aussies get over to Kentucky, they can come and visit you, can't they? Come and check out your facility.
They can. So I'm in Adairville, Kentucky, which is the biggest, closest city is Nashville. I'm sure you all have heard of Nashville. And then Louisville is about 2.5 hours north of me. Nashville is about 45 minutes south of me. So we're just 1.5 miles from Tennessee. Nashville's airport is the closest airport or downtown metro area. And then, of course, Louisville is just about 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes or so north.
Well, we haven't been to your distillery yet, but we're going to have to come when we're back over there again in about a year's time, a bit less than a year's time. We're going to have to come over and check out the facility and drink some more of your beautiful bourbon. But thanks so much for coming on board, and thanks for making amazing bourbon for us to drink and share. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks for listening. Make sure you're connected with us on TikTok, Instagram and YouTube, and stay connected with us by clicking subscribe on your favourite podcast app.